Good evening. Welcome to our Municipal Council agenda for Tuesday, March the 19th, 2019. I'd like to call this meeting to order at this time and ask if there's any declaration of interest. Seeing none, we will move to item C, and that's presentations. Mr. Clerk, I do not have any presentations listed at this time. Is that correct?
Correct, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We'll move to deputations, and likewise with that, I have no deputations listed tonight.
That is also correct.
Thank you. We're down to item E, and that is committee recommendations, and it's to adopt the Committee of the Whole recommendations from our meeting held on March the 5th, 2019, and this is pages 6 to 9 in our agenda. Are there any questions on that? Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Crone, Councillor Crothers. All those in favor? And that's carried. We have item F, and that's the adoption of minutes, to adopt the Committee of the Whole minutes from the meeting held on March the 5th. That's pages 10 to 19. Are there any questions on this?
No questions, I'll move on.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Persicini, seconded by Councillor Foster. All those in favor? And that's carried. Second item is to adopt the council minutes from the special meeting held on March the 5th, 2019. I have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Roy DiClemente, Councillor Morton, all those in favor, and that's carried. The next item is the council minutes from the meeting held on March the 5th, 2019. Councillor Crothers. Oh, you're moving them? Thank you. Okay, you anticipated before I was there. Thank you. And seconded by Councillor Foster. Any questions? All those in favor? And that's carried. Number 3, to adopt the council minutes from the meeting held on March the 5th, pages 23 to 33. Any questions? I have a mover and a seconder. We've done the 3.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was going to do them individually. Okay, we're down to correspondence for consideration, and the first one is from the town of Newmarket regarding the council resolution March the 4th requesting a region-wide school bus stop arm program. I have a moved by Councillor Persicini, seconded by G. We're discussing it. I just want to get a mover and a seconder, and then we'll decide where we're going. Do we have a second? Okay, well, I'm going to start with the top one. And if anybody wants to change that, Councillor Crone, you're fine with that? Okay. Any questions or comments? Go ahead, please.
So thank you, Madam Mayor. I had an opportunity to read some of the correspondence. It looks like the province was looking for the municipalities to come up with a standard. I don't know if a region-wide school bus stop arm program is where we want to go, but I would like to direct staff to work with local and regional staff to assist in the development of a region-wide standard, and whatever that standard might be, we'd put it forward rather than picking one option or another. Would that be appropriate?
I believe that would be appropriate. Staff, would that be appropriate? Mr. Webster's nodding yes. So
then I would move that we amend the motion for the second clause. We would receive it, and the second clause be that that council directs staff to work with local and regional staff to assist in the development of a region-wide standard.
And report back to us. Thank you.
Okay with that.
Might I suggest also that this be circulated with the other municipalities?
I think they've already done that.
Okay. Our motion. Okay? You good with that?
Yep.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay. Item number 2 is correspondence from the Clerks Office, Town of Aurora, dated March the 4th, requesting the council support the regional municipalities of York with York Region to create a regional cannabis usage bylaw that addresses the and reflects community concerns regarding use of cannabis in public spaces. Councillor Roy DiClemente.
I'd like to move receipt.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Morton. Questions, comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. Item number 3, correspondence from L. Boyden, a resident dated March the 12th, requesting a temporary road closure on Birchard Boulevard in Mount Albert on Saturday, June 22nd, 2019, from noon to 11 p.m. for the purpose of holding the 21st annual Birchard Boulevard Street Barbecue.
Move it.
Thank you. That we will accept it. Councillor Persichini,
Yes.
that we will?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Morton, go ahead.
Do we, when we authorize these, do they get a permit to do this? Or do we just allow them to go ahead and do it with no permit?
They are given a permit, I believe. Mr. Molinari, is that correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, permit is received.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Foster?
I'm just assuming that with that permit, the actual road blocking is done by Town of East Gwillimbury staff, not the residents, correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's correct. Staff will take care of that.
Thank you. Questions?
Councillor Persichini?
And the insurance always is there. I'm gonna ask.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'm almost positive that insurance is part of that, but I'd have to get back to you on that.
Yeah, because we don't want to be liable for anything. Thank you.
Well, we've been doing this for 21 years now, so
Just-
I'm sure that,
Just wanted to.
yes, no, thank you very much.
T's and the
Any
dots.
other questions?
No.
All those in favor? And that's carried. We're at number 4, and that's correspondence from the Office of the Acting Chief Administrative Officer, Town of Georgina, dated March the 11th, 2019, regarding the Town of Georgina's resolution of February 27th, 2019, with respect to regulation of short-term rental accommodation. Any discussion? I guess I have a question, Mr. Clerk. I may send it to you first. And do we have an issue with short-term accommodation? Do we have correspondence that comes in on a regular basis, difficulty with police? Perhaps I should have asked Mr. Horner, but I'll start here first. And we're small enough that most people know what's going on in every department. Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Madam Mayor, if you recall, there was actually a correspondence that was probably a year or a little more ago with regards to complaint on a Airbnb just over here on Mount Albert Road. At that point, council did lobby it over to staff to investigate short-term rental situations and issues within Mount Albert. There has been somewhat of a task force with the Clerks Office, with emergency services, and including bylaw enforcement officers. We've met on a number of occasions. There doesn't seem to be an urgency within our borders at this time, but certainly there are short-term rentals sites out there that are advertising certainly rooms that you can rent even just behind us here. So currently there's not anything that's come across our radar in terms of an urgency in implementing a bylaw in our municipality, but we are aware of the situation, are working. We're looking at what other municipalities are doing that have a little more urgency, such as Georgina. They had a consultant present a report. The town didn't actually impose a bylaw. They sort of took a wait and see attitude to see how this summer season affects cottage country in Georgina. So they have a little more concerns with short-term rentals than we do, but we are on top of it as in terms of staff looking at that issue.
you. Councillor Crothers?
I seem to recall I had some emails earlier at the very beginning of the term with a resident down in Harvest Hills who had had extensive conversations with staff about short-term rental down there in Harvest Hills. So she referred to, and staff referred to, a bylaw that said 30 days. And the problem was that they were advertising this place for 2-day rentals. And she was told unless she could prove that someone was there for less than 30 days, there's nothing the town could do. And it sounded a little bit of a muddle back and forth. So do we or do we not have a bylaw that says 30 days minimum? I see Mr. Horner nodding his head.
Or the chief.
Or the chief, okay.
He's well-versed in our bylaws these days.
So the facts are, as the clerk was alluding to, we've had in the past approximately 18 months, 2 years, a handful, and that means less than 5. Short-term rentals or Airbnbs under that banner. And using the codes and bylaws and acts that we have, we've been able to successfully deal with them. Part of that includes working with the Airbnb, the entity itself, to monitor or correct improper postings or non-compliance. So that's what's been happening. There have been a couple other cases that came through noise complaints, and police, other outside agencies were involved. So to date, that really has been the extent of our issue. And of course, it always remains as we get a complaint that we're able to investigate and move that forward and to find out whether it's actually bona fide or not actually turns into be a rental.
Thank you. My preference would be that we enforce the bylaws we already have on the books, especially noise bylaws, because I think most people who are complaining about short-term rentals, it really is about the noise that's created. So I just want to make sure that if we are dealing with these, that we're being very prompt with repeat offenders to make sure that we're enforcing bylaws that we already have in place. Thank you very much.
Do we have a motion to receive? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to make a motion to receive. What I was going to suggest was, given that there was a bit of discussion here today, and I believe when that initial complaint was made, it had to do with the fact that the residents who were staying at the Airbnb didn't know when garbage day was, and so they're leaving garbage out all the time. So I wonder if, since there was a request for a bit of scrutiny on the part of staff, whether there could be a memo summarizing the tools we currently have and the way that we are already able to address this issue. Because if we do get questions, it would be easy to refer to that memo to say, you know what, we have the tools we need to enforce, and in fact they've worked out just great. There are more than 5 Airbnbs in East Gwillimbury listed right now, but I think it's really just a question of how many complaints have we had, and if we do get further complaints, we have that memo to point to say we have the tools, and here are the staff who are available to enforce it. So I may suggest that we receive and that we request staff to give us an information memo outlining the tools at our disposal to address concerns raised.
I have that moved by Councillor Roy DeClemente. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Carruthers. Any questions, comments? Thank you for the suggestion. All those in favor? And that's carried. We're at item H, and that's reports. And the first report is a memo bylaw to dedicate certain lands as public highway. Be it resolved that the Legal and Council Support Services memo dated March 19th, 2019, entitled Bylaw to dedicate certain lands as public highway be received. I have a mover and a seconder, Councillor Persicini, Councillor Morton. Any questions on this item? Seeing none. All those in favor? And that's carried. Item number 2 is Corporate Services Finance Branch Report, CS 2019-02, 2019 Proposed Water and Wastewater Business Plan and Budget. Be it resolved that Corporate Services Report 2019-02, dated March 19, 2019, entitled 2019 Proposed Water and Wastewater Business Plan and Budget be received, and that Council approve the 2019 Proposed Water and Wastewater Operating Business Plan and Budget as summarized in Attachment 1, and that Council approve 2019 Proposed Water and Wastewater Capital Budget as summarized in Attachment 2, and that Council approve the recommended increases to the fixed/delivery 2019 water and wastewater charge from $65 to $70 per service per quarter. Do I have a mover and a seconder at this time? Councillor Persicini, Councillor Crone. Discussion. I'm sure there'll be some discussion. Maybe I can start it off. I'm not seeing any hands up yet. This is our water and wastewater budget for 2019, and it does affect a large number of our residents. Not all. Some have their own septic system, and some have their own water system by way of well, but many use town water. And I think I'm not alone in saying that we hear from time to time people who feel that the water rate, and that includes water and wastewater as well, sometimes they feel that it's too high. And I'm just wondering, Mr. Valchik, if you or staff could address some of the concerns that we have. We hear that people are saying that it's gone up dramatically over the last few years, and the fact that the delivery is separated out now, I think, gives people a different understanding of the cost of water and what are we doing with all of this money. I just wondered if you could take a few minutes now, as I said, either your staff or yourself.
Certainly, Madam Mayor, through you, and I'll make some comments, and perhaps the Director, Mr. Marshall, may wish to fill in some blanks or add to my comments. But there were a number of points that you hit on there. I'll try and address them if I can. Just by way of a little bit of recap, the budget that's before you is being recommended, and the adjustment to the rates is being recommended by the Budget Committee. The Budget Committee has deliberated over the course of the last several weeks, and I just want to remind Council that the proposed increase represents about 2.5% to the average account, which is in line with the inflationary pressure, and keeping in mind that the region, as our supplier of water and our supplier of wastewater treatment services, has imposed a 9% increase to the town. So we have tried to absorb as much of that as we can and not pass that on in its entirety to residents, and therefore that's why the rate increase that we're recommending is only 2.5%. I also just think it's helpful to just recap a little bit about the idea of the fixed component of the charge, because we do get questions on this fairly regularly, and we deal with many of them at the staff level from residents calling in. So we do appreciate the question. Just by way of reminder, prior to 2010, the town had simply a variable usage charge. That was all. It was just a usage charge. But in order to ensure that enough money was going to be collected to pay for the operations of the system, as well as the bills from the region for water supply and for wastewater treatment services, and to put money adequately into reserves for the future for renewal and replacement of the distribution system, there was a deemed minimum charge. And that deemed minimum said that on any bill, it didn't matter how much cubic meters of water you consumed, you would be deemed to have used 50. So it was it was quite a regressive model, in my view, and I think council had recognized that. It had actually been an outstanding request on what council used to refer to as the pending list for a number of years. And so at that point, we tried to essentially disentangle the fixed, and when we refer to fixed, what we're referring to is the infrastructure system, the pipes in the ground, the pumping stations, the water testing that's done to ensure that the water that arrives at a resident's home is potable and safe to drink. All of that distribution is the responsibility of the town. So regardless of how much water goes through those pipes, they have to be maintained in a manner that when you go to turn your tap on, you get safe and adequate water supply to your home. And likewise, that when water enters the wastewater system, that it effectively gets through to an appropriate waste treatment facility. And so that sort of much more, I think, progressive model was put in place. There was and has been some concerns over the years, and justifiably, about the impact on low water users. And the way the model works now, I just want to remind council, is for low water users, and we deem them at our end to be those consuming less than 20 cubic meters per quarter of water, the charge structure as it sits now actually generates a lower bill than it would have under the prior to 2010 structure for a low water user. So it is actually, in our view, much fairer and promotes proper conservation for those that are at the low water usage. And just to make that a little bit more specific, if a homeowner was to use 10 cubic meters of water in a quarter, under the old model, they would have paid about 22% more than what they'd pay under the current model. So it actually it is much more transparent in its current state, but we believe is a much fairer and much more progressive model. I also just want to remind council that we did discuss during the budget committee deliberations the water financial plan, and that's a plan that's required every 5 years to be updated and approved by council post-Walkerton. As a licensed water operator, we have to have a financial plan that ensures that the water system and the water distribution is sustainable to provide safe and appropriate water to residents. A few years ago, back in, I think it was 2016, 2017, council was concerned that perhaps the plan that I will remind council was approved by council, that was there any way for us to slow that down a little bit, just to recognize that the pressure on the residents in terms of increasing bills. And so that has been slowed down considerably. For example, in 2019, the fixed component of the proposed budget rate would be $140, $70 per quarter for water and $70 for wastewater. The approved council financial plan set that at $166. So it was quite considerably higher, and we see the same on the variable side as well. So I think there's been a recognition that we need to be mindful of residents' ability to pay and to try and slow that down, and so we've done that. One of the other things that I'll just mention briefly is that the Budget Committee was very conscious this year of wanting to ensure not only that we did an excellent job in educating the residents in terms of what is causing the charge, what rationalizes the charge, but also in means of helping to impact their ability to use less water. Not only reducing their bill, but also just having a more positive environmental impact. And so staff are going to be working diligently to improve on the communications that we've had in the past. But not only that, but to pursue with perhaps our other municipal partners, maybe even private sector partners, effective conservation measures and support. So I know a few years ago the region ran a very effective Water for Tomorrow program where there was promotion of use of rain barrels and those sorts of things, which again we see in the springtime, particularly if it's a time when folks want to water the lawns and want to get flowers going and so on. If you can use rainwater as opposed to your water out of the tap, it certainly is more environmentally conscious and also a little more affordable. And lastly, I just want to mention, we don't talk about it often, but we do have a water rate deferral program similar to what we have on the tax side. That if residents are finding the increase is something that is not feasible for them, that there is for folks that qualify the opportunity to apply for the deferral as well, and to sort of ease the burden in terms of the increase. So those are just some contextual comments, if you will, and certainly staff are always pleased to try and assist residents any way we can, and if there are questions, they're happy to take calls from them. I just wonder, before I pass it back to you, Madam Mayor, if I've missed anything, if the director wishes to add anything to that.
Thanks. Through you, Madam Mayor. I think you captured the majority of the points quite well. It might be good to kind of reiterate a couple of things here. So the pressure on the budget for 2019, 80% of that pressure is due to the services that York Region's providing. So when they passed their 9% increase on the rate, that resulted in the 80% of the pressure that the town is experiencing, and we've managed to kind of absorb a lot of that and propose a 2.5% rate increase. And to address the increases that have been happening over the past several years, although the region has been passing 9% increases for the past 5 to 6 years, the town's rate has increased by about 35%, but the majority of the municipalities in York Region have been increasing by about 50 to 60%. So that's just to put some of the rate impacts in perspective. That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Persicini.
I realize this is a very complex about the water, and I think I already mentioned before, education is number one. If we could, all those summary of all of what you said, a lot of people don't know step, and then final 80% is the region. If we can educate them, I'm sure Laura, through the marketing way, she'll put it out there with the support of the staff, so people understand. You want to turn the tap, you want safe water. These are the steps it takes. And a lot of I didn't know until I came to as a councillor what goes on, and it's eye-opening. So I think it's important that people know. That's it. You're doing a great job, by the way. Thank you.
Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you, and I want to thank staff for taking the time to put this together and also to talk with us in more detail around this. When this was looked at Budget Committee, there was a recommendation that to direct staff to introduce conservation measures for future water and wastewater budgets, and I would like to put that back into this set of recommendations, but with slightly stronger language. When I look at this budget, no one wants increases, but when I look at this budget, there's two parts. There's the infrastructure part, which the last thing we want is to have the cheapest water infrastructure. We want to make sure that we're not having water main breaks. We want to make sure that we're not another Walkerton. We want to make sure that that budget is strong and healthy and has the reserves so we can continue to provide quality, fresh drinking water. And then the second component is the usage, and that usage component, a lot of that is directed from the region, and we're hearing that they're very high. So I will support this budget, even though there's an increase of 2.5%, because it is in line with the increase we already looked at for our property tax and in line with inflation. But I do want that piece about conservation and education to be part of it. I think that it's so important. that our residents understand what goes into the water bill, all the things that we are doing to ensure that it's fresh and clean, what the consequences are when you don't spend and budget accordingly to keep your water system safe, and that the best way to get the bills down is not reducing infrastructure, but it actually does come down to usage. And I think that, like you said, there's many people we can partner with, other municipalities, even some of our businesses within town might be able to partner with us. So we've talked about this and you've mentioned it, but I would like to put it in the form of a motion, and I can email it to you. And I'm free for any friendly amendments on this, that staff develop a comprehensive water conservation strategy that includes communication, education, and incentives to help reduce water usage and residents' water bills. I'd like to move that.
Thank you. Would you like this added to what we have? Or, okay, we'll add it to that. Mr. Clerk, I'm sure you, do you have that? Would you like it sent to you? Okay, very good. Any other comments, questions? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. During our discussion at Budget Committee, one of the capital projects caught my attention, and I asked a couple of questions that that were answered from staff that I still think that I'd like to hear more about, and that's the water loss control program. And I think that it speaks to Councillor Carruthers' motion, which is that the idea of education and conservation. If we're losing water, we can't conserve it. We got to track it. We have to see what's happening with it. I believe staff's response to my question was that a 10 to 15% loss was common in most municipalities. I wasn't clear about what our losses are. So I wasn't in 100% comfortable with the project itself at $100,000. But what I would like to do is to suggest that the program be approved, subject to a follow-up report to council, and I'd like that report to detail the volume of loss, what kinds of loss, the reasons for those loss, and the steps that we're taking to address them. And I think that really speaks to the spirit of Councillor Carruthers' motion, which is education and prevention and conservation. So I'm happy to support the budget itself. For me, it comes down to the idea that we were mandated to do a financial plan, and we approved that financial plan, and that plan called for us to make even greater increases, and we've softened that impact, and it's still a challenge. It's hard, always hard, to raise people's bills, because it hits people in the pocketbook. But it's important that we continue to responsibly build our infrastructure and save for the future implementation. So I'm supporting the budget, but I would like to hear more on that water loss program, and I'm happy to forward my resolution on to the clerk as well.
Very good. Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Crone?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will admit I have struggled with this. No one, as said before me, no one likes seeing rates go up. I certainly don't. I heard about this during the campaign loud and clear. Two things: that our water quality was poor and the price was high. Now, I know we are taking steps to address the quality issue, and that's coming into line, so I appreciate the efforts there. The pricing issue, I've taken it upon myself to become a little more familiar with it. I promised my voters that I would look into this and review it, and I have looked into this and I've reviewed it. I'm always welcome more information, but with the infrastructure, it's like a house. You can neglect maybe a few shingles on the roof for a while that are missing. You can keep doing that, but after time, it's going to cause other problems. And so steady maintenance is a prudent course of action, and I think that makes good business sense for us as well, to be steadily maintaining our infrastructure. We have, the region sends us a price for the water. We all know that. We have little control over that. But it's so critically important that we maintain the infrastructure, not only because it speaks to the safety of our family and our neighbors, but we as councillors, we can be held criminally liable if the worst were to happen. So I think we have to ponder that. So I'm not happy with rates going up, but what's the alternative? We can't borrow from tax revenues, property tax revenues. We can't borrow from development charges. We have to operate within the budgetary ecosystem of the water budget. So I know we've taken steps to soften it as much as we can, and I applaud that. You know, my business background, we sold a product that we had to rate, and we had competitors. We also had to take reserves. And when we would, we took a business approach where we wanted to maintain steady rates that would increase ever so slightly over time, because we knew that that was easier in people's pocketbooks than having spikes in the charges that we gave them over time. And so that was a much more jarring impact to their pocketbook if every so often they got spiked with a rate increase. I think if we were to turn this budget down and we would be kicking the rate increase down the road to future councils. I don't think it's the right business decision. I think it is fiscally prudent to charge the right rate for the right cost. And so I will be supporting this. But I also support Councillor Carruthers' motion. I do think we need to improve the communication, and we need to be able to explain it in terms that a 12-year-old could understand. And I think we need to take incredible steps for conservation, because that is ways that people can save money. And we've talked about that at quite some length offline. So, you know, this is tough. It's never easy, but we were elected to lead, so let us lead. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I just have a couple. One is Councillor Carruthers, you asked for a friendly amendment, and I would like to add to yours. I can support what you have put up there, but I would also like to add that we include the Environmental Committee. We are just in the very early stages of setting up our advisory committees from our public. And I know that many people have already applied to be a volunteer on our committees, but probably one of the most important is the Environmental Committee. And we quite often throughout the years in council send initiatives off to them to have them to work along with it as well. And this is one I think that would be very important for our Environmental Committee to tackle as well. They are the public, they are paying for the water, and they will understand as well as we do how important both looking after our infrastructure but also looking after the rates, and being rather very encouraging in having people take on different kinds of conservation strategies and having a look at that. So I'm wondering if we can put that in, if you're okay with that. Thank you. Councillor Roy DiClemente.
The clerk had the motion up on the screen. I was just going to suggest that we simply add in that staff work with stakeholders, which would include an advisory committee or other interested parties, like the Conservation Authority, like York Region, and so on. They're also stakeholders, so that staff work with stakeholders to develop and implement, etc.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I forgot to mention, we have our open house April 10th, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I think it would be advantageous if we could have some basis or genesis of a communication that we could share, because I'm sure our residents will want to understand this better. So I would encourage staff to have a better hold, a better handle on our communication approach. And secondly, if I could ask just one more question to Madam Mayor, through you to Mr. Velchik. I understand that some municipalities neighboring, although we have been charged from time to time of being very pricey in York Region, some other municipalities are catching up. Have you heard of any municipalities and the rates that they are taking this year with respects to their water budgets? I've heard comments from anywhere from 5% to double digits. Can you add any light to that?
Madam Mayor, through you, I can advise you that based on our research, our understanding is that certainly in the other municipalities within York Region, that the increase being proposed on a percentage basis to the average bill in EG is in line with sort of the lower end of rate increases that are being approved by various councils, and that the rate increases for the most part are up into the mid-high single digits and into the double-digit increases as well for municipalities that are looking to significantly increase their revenue generation in that area.
Councillor Crothers.
Thank you. One more comment. There was a video that's been shared around, and we've shared it with staff, that explains how we budget for water. It's not particular to our municipality, but if we could take a look at that and share it with our communications department and look at developing that into something that we could make our own, I think that would be very good, because it talks about why the water bills are what they are, as well as what we can do to conserve. So I think it's a great example of the type of thing that we can do in the area of communication. So I'll leave that with you to share. Go ahead.
Madam Mayor, through you, we'd be happy to do that, and I did want to express my sincere appreciation for passing along some of the materials, because we do look for those sorts of things regularly, but anything that you have that you think might help in terms of the communication through to the residents is greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Sorry, Mr. Clark.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just to assist council members with the ongoing resolution and friendly amendments. So I put it up on the screen for you. So to start, I'll start at the bottom. The green highlighted area was Councillor Crothers' initial addition. Then the yellow highlighted area in the third paragraph was Councillor Rodi Clemente's addition. And the blue highlighted area within Councillor Crothers' addition was yours, Madam Mayor. So council, as they continue to deliberate, can certainly read the resolution on the screen, and if you wish, I can read it out aloud so that live streaming folks can hear it as well.
Any questions or comments? Can everybody see that? Okay. If there are no other questions or comments, this is moved by Councillor Persicini and seconded by Councillor Crothers. Oh, a recorded vote. Okay.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the resolution is on the screen before. Would you like me to read it out for you?
Yes, please, for those that may be picking this up on live stream.
Resolution reads as follows. Be it resolved that Corporate Services Report CS 2019-02, dated March 19th, 2019, entitled 2019 Proposed Water and Wastewater Business Plan and Budget, be received, and that Council approved the 2019 Proposed Water and Wastewater Operating Business Plan and Budget as summarized in Attachment 1, and that Council approve the 2019 Proposed Water and Wastewater Capital Budget as summarized in Attachment 2, with the water loss control program to be approved subject to a follow-up report to council detailing the volume and type of loss being experienced, the reasons for those losses, and the steps being taken to resolve issues identified, and that council approve the recommended increase to the fixed delivery 2019 wastewater charge from $65 to $70 per service per quarter, and that council direct staff to work with stakeholders to develop a comprehensive water conservation strategy that includes communications, education, and incentives to help reduce water usage and residents' water bills. Councillor Morton, you requested a recorded vote. How do you vote? No. Councillor Persicini, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Roy DiClemente, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Crothers, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Crone, how do you vote?
Yes.
Councillor Foster, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Mayor Haxon, how do you vote?
Yes.
The motion is carried.
Thank you very much. Just before we finish on this topic, I do want to thank staff very much for the amount of work that they have done on this. I know that you heard our goals and wanted to be able to lower much more than we were able to, but you worked very hard at it, and we've come to a very good conclusion, I believe. People in East Gwillimbury can turn their tap without hesitation and know that they have a glass of water, not only that the quantity is there, but that it is safe. We don't have water pipes that are broken and mains that are broken in our community where people are for days and sometimes even a week without water. That just doesn't happen. I can't ever remember, and I've been here 18 years, and I don't recall a water main break. So we are looking after that end of it as well. And it's a tough balancing act, but I think we've done a very good balance with this time, and also move forward with talking to our residents about conserving water. And if they truly find that the bill is very high, they may find that there are some corners that they can cut to bring it down to an acceptable usage. So please, Mr. Velchik and also Mr. Marshall, you have staff behind you as well. I know that work on this as well. Please thank them very much for all the efforts. Very much appreciated by council. With that, I'm going to move to item I, and that's resolutions. I have no resolutions at this time. And we're down to bylaws, and we have 4 bylaws. It's your choice to take them individually or collectively. Councillor Persicini has moved them all, seconded by Councillor Crothers. Councillor Roy DiClemente, a question on those?
Thank you. Just with respect to the bylaw establishing rates and charges, we had a recorded vote earlier today. I'm just, I guess it wasn't a unanimous vote, and given the amount of effort that staff have put into this initiative, I hadn't heard any concerns raised that hadn't been addressed. And so I guess I'm a little concerned that it wasn't a unanimous vote and what the reasons behind that were, given that each of us had an opportunity on several occasions, I think it was 3 or 4 meetings now, to address that. I guess I'm concerned, Madam Mayor, if there was something that was missed, that wasn't addressed. I want to make sure that gets captured. Thank you.
And are you directing that to the nay vote?
I guess that's where it's going. If we're going to move all of these bylaws, perhaps this one should be separated out.
Thank you.
I'm just wanting to have that discussion, since it wasn't a unanimous vote, and we've spent, I don't know, 6 weeks working on this, and I've heard many questions, and each of those questions has been answered Whether or not we like the answer, that, you know, that was the challenge that was before us, and we've risen to that challenge. And I feel like if there isn't a unanimous vote, I wanted to understand why, and if there was something that we had missed that wasn't addressed.
Thank you. So I'm understanding that you want to deal with bylaw 1, 2, and 3, and then deal with bylaw 4 separately?
That's fine. I can second 1, 2, and 3. Thank you.
1, 2, and 3, and that is moved and seconded already. All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, bylaw number 4 that has been separated out. Councillor Crothers, please.
Thank you. I agree with Councillor Roy DiClemente that I think that when we're in opposition to important resolutions that are before us, we owe our colleagues an explanation as to why we are opposed, what particular part of it. I know some of us are still learning here, and when I see one of my colleagues vote no to something, I like to know what their rationale is, because maybe it's something I haven't thought of. Maybe they have some very valid points that would sway my vote on something. So I think as a good governance practice, I would put it on all of us when we're voting no to make sure that we are communicating that to our colleagues so that we all have the same piece of information as a courtesy.
Councillor Martin, do you have any comments at this time?
No, I'm not sure. Other than the fact that I had numerous conversations with my residents over the time that I was out campaigning, even up until the time I went home to get lunch tonight. And I have never, in all the time that I was on council, challenged anyone else's, whether they voted for it or whether they didn't. And number one, it's we've had a lot added to the original motion tonight too, that we've not had a real opportunity to sit and either pull things apart or add other things to it. And to have it done tonight when we're going to be doing the approving it and having a vote all the way around, I don't think was fair. And I have the right to vote the way I wish to vote, and it wasn't this council that elected me. It was my people out on the street, and I have chosen at this time to support their concerns.
Thank you. Do I have a mover and seconder for bylaw number 4, please? Councillor Persicini, Councillor Crone. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Item number 5, K is other business. Mr. Webster, do we have any other business before us at this time?
I do not believe so, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Clerk, do you know anything that we don't know?
I dare not.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And with that, item L is our confirming bylaw, moved by Councillor Roy DiClemente, seconded by Councillor Foster. All those in favor, and that's carried. And we will have an adjournment at 7:53, moved by Councillor Roy DiClemente, seconded by Councillor Crothers. All those in favor, and that's carried. Thank you very much, staff. Appreciate it. It's been a longer day, and